welcome back from lunch, from breakouts. We are very excited for our next guest. And the title is The Next Chapter of Social Change and Finding Our Voice. The one and only Tarana J. Burke asserts that Me Too is more than just a moment in time. As the founder of this vital and growing movement, and as someone who has been organizing within issues facing Black women and girls for more than 3 decades, Tarana has a commitment and vision that is bigger than any hashtag or viral moment. She also has a book coming out in April in partnership with Brene Brown titled, You Are Your Best Thing. We're so happy to welcome Tarana, and she's going to be in conversation with Soren.
Hello.
Welcome, Tarana. It's so good to have you.
So good to be back, Soren.
I would think it was 2 years ago. We sat down live and in person, and your beautiful daughter was there.
Yes.
You touch so many people. Your heart and your vision touch so many people, and it's just really an honor to have you back with us today.
Well, I'm glad to be back, and there's so many things that reverberated from that first time that I was here. People I met, connections I made, and people, of course, I run into people all the time to say, "Oh, I think I heard you speak of wisdom." So,
well, there's a lot I want to talk about, but before we go into that, how are you doing? How's been this last year for you? How's your heart? How's your sense of hope? I know there's been so much tragedy we've all experienced and witnessed, and I know you're working on also a lot of exciting new projects, and I just thought I'd check in. How are you doing in this?
It's a good time to check in. I'm good because I have spent the last 6 months trying to finish my memoir, and I just finished.
All right.
So I am very excited about that. It's hard. It's a very hard thing to do, and to do it under the pressure of everything that's been happening, with the pandemic and so forth, and quarantining and.
This is separate from the book. Separate from the book you're doing with Brene Brown.
That's separate from the book, yeah. That I'm doing.
You have two books. Okay, wow.
Books coming out this year, yeah, and then also working on 2 books is a big deal. So yeah. So this is my first sort of literally today, because yesterday I was editing up until yesterday. So it's the start of my first mini break. I'll have a few days to kind of breathe and not have deadlines and things I have to do. So I'm feeling good, and I am and I think I've been really, really intentional about figuring out how to feel good in the last 6 months. So yeah, it's helping.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, there's a lot I want to cover today, and I think one of the things which might relate a little bit to the book you're doing with Brene Brown is finding your voice and that process for you. And I'm sure writing your memoirs is probably an expression, right, of sharing your voice and of sharing the pain, sharing the joy. So I'm curious, what are some of the things you learned from about both writing your memoir, but also just this whole process of encouraging women, and particularly women of color, that you have a voice and we need to hear your voice, and encouraging that voice to be brought forth in the culture so the culture can adjust. If the culture doesn't know, it's hard to make adjustments. And so I'm curious if you have just thoughts or insights in that area.
I do. I think that one of the things I've certainly learned in the last 4 years, and it's been almost 4 years since Me Too went viral, is that as important as it is for us to use our voice and to find entry points to help people find, or I should say, connect to their voice, I think, it's like empowerment. We don't empower people. We help people become, find their own power. As important as that is, I think when we have that opportunity to, if I'm in a position to help women feel or people feel like they have a voice or find a voice, is to know that you also don't have to share your voice, that your voice is your gift first.
Yeah.
And that has been a big lesson for me. And it's been I've been figuring out how to articulate it, I think, for a long time. And I think these last 4 years have helped me. There is a way that we have, I want to say commodified, but it's not just that. It's a way that we have almost, help me, I'm at a loss of words. It's something like trivialized, right? It's the idea of voice. Yeah. So what people say is, oh, you speak up and you talk about these issues, you're helping these women find their voice. And And we say that kind of as a throwaway, not we, but a lot of people say this kind of a throwaway or a catch-all. And so there's a couple of ways, if you get into the nuance of that, right? My experience and my voice may be a part of what somebody else experienced, but it's I don't want to also impose my voice on
Right. Yes. Yes.
That's the first. And I think there's a way that when we do that, people feel like they have to fall underneath that. Like, okay, well, I guess she's speaking for me. And no, I may not be. And that's okay. To feel comfortable and confident enough to know that this is my individual way of expression and my individual experiences that have led me here. And you can find your own particular one. Right. And then the other one is when you do find it and you feel powerful enough to give voice to whatever it is, there's also, we should, I think, explore and talk more about the ways that our voice is a gift that doesn't have to be shared to be valuable. Right. Right. And I'm not trying to tell people to be quiet at all. I think that we should use it and raise it and, use our voices, raise our voices, but also sometimes we have a quiet voice. Yeah. Sometimes we have a different voice than what people are used to. And and if you don't see it as a gift, it can feel overwhelming when you have these other ones that don't look like yours. So I've been really trying to be careful how I, approach that.
And that there's a timing to it and an honoring of it. And that if it's a gift, it might be, there are moments where it wants to be shared and moments where it might not. It's just shared with yourself. Yeah. And really feel into that and not feel like, oh, me talking and saying whatever's on my mind is my voice.
Yeah, it is.
We appreciate that.
It really is.
And it reminds me of something I read on your website, which you talked about, and I think I'm getting the phrase, but you said empowerment through empathy. And that there's a way that we're both speaking, but also taking in and listening, and it's not just me speaking my voice maybe, but it's also me listening and taking in the experience of another person. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about that. Like, how does empathy play into this social change movement for you?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge, particularly in this work that I'm doing. I think one, just to talk about sexual violence for a minute, but I think it plays out in other forms of violence and in other social justice areas. People have, when it comes to sexual violence, people have a tendency to individualize and not think of it as a community issue or a social issue, but an individual issue. And I think what Me Too going viral did was really underscore the idea that there has to be a community issue. You can't have 12 million people respond to a hashtag all saying, I've experienced this type of violence in my life personally, and it's not an issue for us to think of on a community level. Yeah. And part of the reason why empathy plays a big role is that if we can't empathize, everybody hasn't experienced it, but we've all experienced some kind of trauma or loss, right? And pain and fear. Those are universal feelings, and we have experiences that give us those feelings that are very different. Our ability to tap into those, to understand why it's important that we hold each other, is crucial to us doing something about this public health crisis that is sexual violence. But it's also crucial to us making any kind of change, because I've been doing social justice work since I was 14. Right. I have seen so much progress within the community around the silos that we've created, right? I only do anti-gun violence. I only do sexual violence. I only work on climate change. I'm dealing with racial justice, and never really come. I mean, obviously people come together, or you come together when somehow or another those things intersect in a big way. What I've witnessed in the last decade, I think it started when we had that wave of activism around like Occupy Wall Street, and you saw this outward display, because the movement work has never stopped. But when you saw these huge outward displays of people pushing back against white supremacy, pushing back against economic dominance and all these other kind of social ills, we saw a way that we were kind of collapsing and realizing that, all of us are certainly working towards a common thing.
Yeah.
right? We want liberation from these various forms of oppression.
Yeah.
And so we have to work together. And we also have to look closer at how they intersect. Empathy goes a long way in helping people see it. In a very short, that's a long answer to say, it just goes a long way in helping people see each other.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And I think one of the interesting things about COVID is that it kind of equalized the playing field on one level, right? We all breathe and we can all die, and we all are susceptible to something, and it doesn't matter what our position is in society
At all. Yeah.
right? And I'm curious, do you for you all these different issues, and I know you have your ones you're particular on, is there like a core element that you feel like, wow, if our society could just get this one thing, that's like the acupuncture point or the center point? Is it empathy, or do you feel like it's just hard to name like one true kind of place where shift begins to happen?
It's hard to name, but I will say this. I have been meditating on the idea of grace for the last year, since a little bit before COVID probably. But I'm really, and sometimes things sit with me for a while. Empathy was the same way. A long time ago, it just kept coming back and the word kept coming to me. I have been sitting with the idea of grace. And as you know, I'm Christian by faith and by, in practice. But grace is in all religions and all.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever. It's not obviously, but from the perspective as a Christian, but also just as a human, it really makes me sad. For there's no fancy way to put that. To see how little grace we have for each other when so much grace is imparted to us, right? And the grace that we receive, when we think about even being, something that's creating some kind of reciprocity, there's so much transaction. It's so transactional. It's not, we don't give it in the way that we receive it. And I think about the kind of grace that I have received in my life that is divine. There's no way that I can put a dollar amount, there's no way that I can return that in a way that is just transactional. So I do think that it's not the sole thing, but I definitely wish that we could talk about it more and think about it more. Even in what I was just talking about how in social justice spaces and movement spaces, we're doing a lot more cross work and intersectional work. Part of what I see and part of what's brought this up for me in the last year is there's also we operate with so little grace for each other, even when we know that we're ultimately working towards the same thing.
Yeah.
It could be within the same issue, it can be close to it. So for instance, if I believe in an approach that is mindful, and it is not, and I just really have to make sure that all the work I do starts from a place of peace and ends in a place of peace.
Yeah.
That is not violent, that is right. That is not antithetical to any other. I can do that and I can be against any number of things, but within that, like that's the way I frame it. And people who don't frame it aren't my enemy. Yeah. Right. And what happens is people who frame things differently, but are heading towards, as long as your framing is not harmful to the people who you're trying to help, and if it's not a hindrance to progress, to general progress around this thing, I don't understand why we can't have the grace to even do it separately. We don't have to work together, right? But do it separately, but not be enemies. If we are ultimately working towards liberation will be completely false if we don't get there and have a politic of grace. Yeah. It just doesn't, I don't see how people don't see that. Yeah. What happens? Because I also think, I don't think liberation is a destination either, but that's another conversation. Sure. But we're working towards a liberation in ways to be liberated from these various forms of oppression. I don't see how we think we can do that without grace for each other. I don't see how we think we can do that without grace for ourselves, right? Because it also extends into the ways that we are harmful to ourselves. And so many of us who are in these movement spaces and social justice spaces and wellness spaces exude so much wisdom and so much kindness and love and gentleness and grace for everybody else but ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's a thing. I mean, I'm not super articulate in this.
No, it's beautiful. I get it. I am wondering if there's somebody out there who's like, you know what? I don't know if I've ever experienced grace. I hear what Tarana is saying. Do you have a working definition or working, like, I feel like I can feel it. I've had that feeling,
Yeah.
but I also can see some people are like, I don't know if I know what that.
That's interesting, because I'm trying to think of a way to define it that's not Christian, right? I don't want to impose that on people.
Well, what I hear is also a tenderness, a forgiveness,
Absolutely.
quality of us, togetherness,
It is about
a love.
It's about compassion. I would say the elements of grace: compassion, empathy, respect, kindness, and like those things are the elements of grace. And it is like benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Right? Space, we talk about space a lot of times and don't really define it. And it's like, space for me is, I give you the benefit of the doubt. I trust, and it's hard. And these are not things that are easily like given away. I know trust is a big one for people, but I don't mean like I trust you in my bank account or even that I trust you with my heart. But I do mean that I trust, I've watched your work, perhaps. I've watched how you've moved in these movement spaces. And I trust that we are headed towards the same direction.
Yes.
But that there are so many people who are doing work towards ending and dismantling, disrupting sexual violence.
Yeah.
They don't all have the same vision I have for that work. Not any of those, none of those people are an enemy to me. Not a single one of them. None of those people are in competition with me.
Yeah.
Not a single one of them. Right. But there are many for whom and my general way to say that's not my ministry. Right. Yeah. Perfect example. There are some people who do really, really incredible work with people who've caused harm, with folks who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, for the people who've been the harm doers. I've watched this little mini doc that was amazing. I have some friends who do that work. That's not my ministry. It's not what I'm called to do. But I have nothing disparaging to say about that. I am curious and I want to learn more about it. I have feelings that come up when I think about it that make me fearful a little bit and make me just wonder, right? I have questions, but I think that I can engage respectfully and have enough grace and space for the people who are doing that work to say, just help me understand. Yeah. If you can help me understand, not, what are you doing that for? That's ridiculous. They
don't need support. Yeah. I'm curious, in the writing of the memoir, is that partly what you had to learn? Because I'm sure you're going back and you're seeing things in your life that's probably hard, and you're witnessing yourself as this tender child and growing. And I don't know how long the memoir is, but I would imagine that would bring forth a certain compassion for yourself and everything you've been through, and also appreciation for the people who were there to pick you up, or there to hold you.
Yeah, this was hard. The writing of the memoir was very, very difficult because of that, right? I've been really intentional about not sharing my story. And I do that almost from a political place, that I think I really want to normalize that we don't, as survivors, we don't have to share stories of tragedy in order to move people to want to do something that's right and that's just. And so I am really, I'm sorry if y'all can hear that. I have a very loud doorbell. So I've been intentional about that. And I also want to model the idea that we get to tell our stories in our own time, in our own way, in ways that make us feel comfortable, and in ways that are, and period, right? So I did have to, it was really interesting examining the ways that I did not, like I just said, people who do this work, who exude it, give it to everybody else, and you don't practice it in your own life. I think the book was a real examination of how much I did not practice it in my own life until I figured out that it was the key to my own liberation, my personal liberation. and then it opened up. I don't want to go out in the world and talk to any young person, any survivor, anybody about anything in a way that's, I just hear people that sound like I have the answers.
This is how you should do it. If you're
how you do it.
activist, this is what it looks like.
Right. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. And I see it so much. Here's 5 steps to healing. Here's, 10 things that you have to do. And I just think what I did in this book, and I think what people have to do, is deep self-exploration is so necessary in order to really chart out your path to healing.
Yeah.
Because it's just not going to look like everybody else's.
And how do you notice yourself, like if there's like a painful memory or you make a mistake or there's something happening in your world and just did not go how you want and you feel, do you have a phrase that you say to yourself that like expresses grace towards yourself, or is it just kind of in the moment of feeling? Like, how does it show up into your life? Like you get a conflict with somebody and like, I didn't handle that well. Like, how does that grace?
I have to do. Yeah, I've started a practice and I have to do when I cause harm to somebody else. Usually I'm really like, what's the word? I get really frantic about those times. Right? And then some of it is probably a little unhealthy, but I do get
unsettling. It's unsettling.
It's very unsettling. And so I need to know, and I need to know what I need to do to make amends. Right. And so oftentimes what I do best is write. So I will write letters to people and say, here's a note. And I've done this a lot over the years because I get it from my mother. My mother does the same thing. I'm not sure if I hurt your feelings. And if I did, I'm really, really sorry. And I just want to, give you some space and time. And whenever you're ready, you can come talk to me, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so I started doing that for myself.
Oh, toward yourself? You write a letter towards yourself?
Yeah, just a little note. I may write a sticky note even and say, I just want to apologize for how I handled you earlier because that's not what we agreed to.
Right.
And I want to do this differently, and I'm still committed. And I have these little random. One of the things that was interesting about writing the notes is writing the memoir was pulling out years of ways that I have tried. Years ago, I think I talked about this last time I was here, that I used to keep a joy journal. Yeah. Which I still have. I have a couple of them here. I haven't done that. I do want to go back to it because I pulled it out and I was like, I haven't done this in so long. But, I've kept joy journals. I have made videos and voice notes. I have sticky notes. I'm just always trying something different to stay the course, because it's just hard. And then you look at,
and you're a public figure now, and there's a lot of expectations of you and projections onto you and people thinking like this and that. So I imagine that makes it even harder to navigate.
It does. I wish we could I know this is big wishful thinking, but I do wish we could like remodel this whole idea of what it is to be a public figure. I do believe in leadership. I believe in thought leadership. I believe some people are visionary. I think that we need certain voices to be louder sometimes because they provide a particular kind of guidance. So I'm not saying that, but I also think that we have so much access to so much information that anybody can position themselves to be that, right? And we've created the society has sort of created a situation where you don't get to be a human being anymore. Yeah. And so instead of being Tarana, who has some really clear thoughts about a particular body of work that I want to do and vision for a way forward around sexual violence, but maybe I don't know a lot about some other topic, right? I want to learn about that. There is a way in which people position us to be experts at everything, have the right answer all the time, say the right thing, be politically astute. And that's just not real. Yeah. And again, it goes back to that trust and grace that I was talking about. This is actually connected to it. How I show up in the world, in whatever way it is that you were introduced to me and how you know me, I would hope would generate enough trust that when I make a mistake in another world or another thing, that it's not coming from a place that's nefarious in some kind of way, that it's like, I made a mistake, right? I made a mistake. I misspoke, I missed whatever. And again, I think we have just power of discernment. So no, I can't come and say, I made a mistake for the 4th time, y'all, right? That might get a little bit like, well, we might have to put you to the side until you figure out how not to make so many public mistakes.
Yeah.
But there's certainly not enough. I watched this really great talk, and I wish people would go Google. It's on YouTube. I saw it in person, but I'm so glad it's on YouTube. Bradford Young is an amazing cinematographer. He was a cinematographer for movies like Selma, and did he do Moonlight? No, he didn't do Moonlight. But he's just a beautiful, beautiful soul. And he's in conversation with Rashad. What's Rashad's last name? Ooh, I want to say. But if you put in Bradford Young and Rashad, or Bradford Young and Black Star Film Fest, you'll see the conversation. It's such a beautiful conversation between these two black men who we don't, and I'm saying that because we don't get to see Black men be tender often enough, who have been best friends for 20-something years. And one of the things Bradford talked about is he wished that we could grapple more publicly, right? As a public figure, I don't get to say out loud, I'm really struggling with the idea of such and such and such.
Yeah.
You know, or to level a critique at something that isn't immediately labeled as a takedown or a this or a that. We are just put in a bucket, meant to stay there, and only come out when I need you to say da 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 da. The other side to that is this past summer, you always get me talking, sorry. But the other, I want to say this quickly, the other side to that is I also am not one-dimensional. So while I want to grapple with some things publicly and have a dialogue, not like a monologue, deliver a monologue, this past summer when there was all this unrest after Breonna Taylor and George Floyd were murdered, I was posting a lot about it online, talking about a lot of it on social media. And there were people who were saying things like, well, why are you talking about this? This has nothing to do with Me Too. This is not your lane. Your lane. I was like,
I don't know you well enough, clearly.
Clearly. One, I take whatever lane I want. But aside from that, I am a Black woman, so it's absolutely my lane. I am a person who committed my life to social justice, so it's absolutely my lane. I'm a human being who watched another human being's life be snuffed out. I get a right to say whatever I want about that. Right. So there's that, right? There's this idea that because my work, the way you know me, is about sexual violence, that I should not creep over into these other issues. People, when Me Too went viral October of 2017, the Parkland shootings happened, I think, in February of 2018. One of the crudest things I heard from people was, oh, well, Me Too is over now. It's going to be all gun violence.
Wow. As if it's all not connected.
As if it's all not connected. It is just, and so it's hard to be a public figure and be a human being.
Yeah.
You know.
So I'm trying to. Sadly, we need to schedule you for longer next time because I love talking to you too. We just have like a minute left, so I'm just curious. Anything you want to leave us with? Anything that we did not touch on that's just kind of in your heart in this moment that you feel like you want to give voice to, and we will listen and take you in?
I mean, I think I covered most of it. I didn't plan on talking about grace, and I usually
loved it. I loved it. It was here.
Yeah, usually things that I'm meditating on, I try not to share until I have a fully thought out thing. But I do think we need to practice more grace, and I think that those of us who believe in liberation and to be liberated from any form of oppression can't do that without grace. And so
And the journey has to be, it can't just be the destination.
No,
The journey has to be graceful to get to a graceful destination. Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you for
Thank you so
having me.
much, Tarana. I just appreciate you so much. And we'll be in touch.
All right, everybody, have a good, enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
All right, take care.